I caught you. This is unacceptable. You're fired. Clear your desk and leave.
2 weeks into Elizabeth's employment, Kim's organization learned a valuable lesson. The American was everywhere, and she gave exactly zero fucks about hierarchy. She fired 3 people in the first week. Not because Kim told her to, but because she'd found them in Zhang's payment records. She walked into their offices with security footage, bank statements, and that terrifying smile that meant someone's life was about to get complicated. "You've been selling information to Zhang for 6 months, she'd said to Kim's logistics manager, a man who'd been with the organization for 5 years. "You're done. Security will escort you out. And before you think about running to Zhang, I've already sent him evidence that you were actually a double agent working for us. So good luck with that." The man had left pale and shaking. Elizabeth had his office cleaned out by noon. By week 2, Kim's lieutenants had started calling her the ghost because she appeared in places she shouldn't be able to access, knew things she shouldn't be able to know, and moved through the organization like she'd built it herself. Minyang found it hilarious. She reorganized her entire filing system and found $2 million in missing funds. "I think I'm in love with her." "You have a girlfriend," Kim reminded him. "Who also loves her. They're getting coffee tomorrow." Kim was less amused, particularly at 12 a.m. on a Tuesday when he was in his penthouse shower, trying to wash away the tension of a deal gone wrong, and heard his bathroom door open. "Boss, I need a signature." He froze, water streaming down his back. "Elizabeth. I'm in the shower." "I can see that." Her voice was completely unbothered. "The Tokyo shipment got flagged at customs. I need your signature on new documentation in the next 10 minutes or we lose a $5 million delivery. Can't this wait?" "No. 10 minutes. The customs officer I bribed only has a small window before his supervisor shows up." The shower curtain didn't move, but he heard paper rustling. "I'm leaving the documents on the counter. Sign the highlighted sections. I'll be back in 5. The door closed. Kim stood under the water, naked and furious and somehow also impressed. She'd just walked into his bathroom, his private sanctuary, like she was checking his office for staplers. He got out, wrapped a towel around his waist, and signed the documents with water still dripping from his hair. Elizabeth returned exactly 5 minutes later, grabbed the papers without looking at him, and left. No apology. No acknowledgement that she'd just violated every boundary he had. The next morning, Kim called her into his office. "We need to discuss appropriate workplace behavior." Elizabeth looked up from her tablet. "Okay. What did I do wrong?" "You walked into my bathroom while I was showering. You weren't answering your phone. The Tokyo deal was time-sensitive." She tilted her head. "Did you want me to let $5 million disappear because you were washing your hair? I want you to respect my privacy." "Cool. I'll respect your privacy the moment your enemies do." Elizabeth stood, walked to his desk, and pulled up a file on her tablet. "Speaking of which, there was another attempt on your life last night. Poison in your dinner order from that restaurant you like. I intercepted it, tested it, and had the delivery guy arrested. He was working for the Tanaka Group." Kim's anger evaporated into cold focus. "Someone tried to poison me. Someone tries to poison you every other week. I handle it." Elizabeth swiped to another screen. "Also, your dry cleaning had a tracking device in the jacket pocket. Removed it. And your car has been following a pattern that makes you vulnerable to ambush between here and your club in Dongdukian. I've rerouted your schedule. You did all this without telling me. I'm telling you now. While you're alive to hear it." Elizabeth met his eyes. "Look, if you want me to knock before entering rooms, fine. But understand that every second I waste on politeness is a second your enemies can use to kill you. Your call." Kim stared at her, this impossible woman who'd turned his organization upside down in 2 weeks, who walked into his shower without flinching, who somehow kept him alive while systematically destroying his sense of control. "My men are terrified of you," he said quietly. "Good. Terrified people don't betray you. Elizabeth headed for the door, then paused. Oh, and Minyoung's girlfriend wants to know if you'll approve my request for advanced weapons training. Apparently I'm a natural with knives. That's not reassuring. It's not meant to be. She smiled, the ghost showing her teeth. See you at the warehouse inspection at 2. Wear something you don't mind getting blood on. I heard the Tanaka people are planning to make a statement. The door closed. Kim sat alone in his office, the most powerful man in Seoul, and realized he'd completely lost control of his own life. The worst part? Elizabeth was right. He'd never been safer. And that terrified him more than any enemy ever had. The dead rat appeared on a Tuesday, sitting on the hood of Kim's Bentley like a grotesque hood ornament. Tied to its tail was a note in Korean, "You're next." Kim's security team surrounded the vehicle, hands on weapons, scanning for additional threats. Kim himself stood stone-faced, jaw tight. This was an escalation, a direct threat at his own headquarters. Elizabeth walked past the entire scene carrying coffee, glanced at the rat, and laughed. Amateur hour, she said, not breaking stride. They couldn't even spring for a horse head? This is just sad. Kim followed her inside. Someone left a death threat on my car. Someone left a pet store purchase on your car. There's a difference. Elizabeth set down her coffee, pulled out her phone. The Tanaka group has been making noise about retaliating for the Tokyo shipment we saved. This is them testing you, seeing if you'll panic over theatrical bullshit. She showed him surveillance footage. They had a kid deliver it. Paid him $15. If they were serious, they'd have used a bomb. You're not concerned. I'm concerned about real threats, not amateur gangsters who watched too many movies. Elizabeth deleted the footage. But I'll have someone follow the kid, find out who hired him, and we'll send a better message back. The better message came 3 days later at a negotiation meeting in a warehouse Kim owned in Incheon. The Tanaka representative, a man named Chen with Yakuza tattoos and dead eyes, brought 5 bodyguards to discuss territorial disputes. Elizabeth sat next to Kim, wearing her usual boots and jeans, looking bored while Chen outlined demands that were really just threats with pleasantries attached. And if Kim Young refuses these very reasonable terms, we'll be forced to take more aggressive action. Like leaving dead rats on cars? Elizabeth asked. Because I have to tell you, that was embarrassing for everyone involved. Chen's smile froze. You're the American. The one who insulted our message. I'm the American who's insulting your entire operation. Your aggressive action is a joke. You want to threaten Kim? Do it properly or don't waste our time. One of S bodyguards stepped forward. Kim tensed, ready to intervene, but Elizabeth was already moving. She didn't run. Didn't call for security. She grabbed the metal folding chair she'd been sitting in, stood, and held it like a baseball bat. Sit down, she told the bodyguard. Or find out what American street girls do to men who think they're scary. The warehouse went silent. Kim's security team watched, hands hovering near weapons. Chen's men looked to their boss for direction. Elizabeth didn't blink. I've fought off drunk soldiers in Dongducheon, crackheads in Baltimore, and a pimp with a knife in Atlanta. You think you scare me? You're wearing a suit that costs more than my childhood. You've never been hungry a day in your life. So either pull a weapon or sit the fuck down. The bodyguard looked at Chen. Chen looked at Elizabeth, really looked at her, and saw something that made his calculation change. Perhaps, Chen said slowly, we've been hasty. Kim Young clearly has capable people. Kim Young has me, Elizabeth corrected, still holding the chair. And unlike the people you're used to intimidating, I don't intimidate. I escalate. The meeting ended 20 minutes later with terms favorable to Kim. As Chan and his people left, one of the bodyguards muttered something in Japanese. He said you're crazy, Minyoung translated, appearing at Kim's elbow. He said I'm dangerous, Elizabeth corrected, setting the chair down. There's a difference. Crazy people are unpredictable. Dangerous people are very, very predictable. She looked at Kim. They'll come for me now. They saw me protect you, saw me challenge them. I'm a target. I'll increase your security. I don't need security. I need a gun permit, better intel on the Tanaka Group's movements, and combat training from whoever taught your lieutenants. Elizabeth grabbed her jacket. Also, I'm moving into your penthouse. Kim blinked. Excuse me? If they're targeting me, they'll hit your place to get to both of us at once. Makes more sense for me to be there when it happens. She said it like she was discussing office supplies. I'll take the guest room. I don't snore, I clean up after myself, and I promise not to walk in on any more showers. Elizabeth. This isn't a request. This is me doing my job. She met his eyes, and for the first time, he saw something beneath the confidence, not fear exactly, but awareness. She knew what she'd just made herself. You hired me to keep you alive. Can't do that if I'm across the city when someone comes calling. Kim watched her walk away, this woman who'd just threatened a Yakuza enforcer with a folding chair, who'd mocked death threats and turned assassination attempts into administrative problems. Minyoung whistled low. She's either the bravest person I've ever met or the craziest. Both, Kim said quietly. She's both. And now she was moving into his home, into his space, into every corner of his life where he couldn't escape her. He should have been angry about the loss of privacy. Instead, he felt something he hadn't felt in years when it came to women. Safe. And that was more terrifying than any threat the Tanaka Group could deliver. The office was dark except for the city lights filtering through floor-to-ceiling windows. Elizabeth sat in Kim's chair, again, scrolling through encrypted files on Zhang's cloned phone, cross-referencing names with Kim's own intelligence database. It was past midnight. She'd told Kim to go home hours ago. He'd refused. Now he stood by the window, watching her reflection in the glass, the question that had been building for weeks finally demanding an answer. Where did you learn to fight? Elizabeth didn't look up from the screen. The streets. I told you. The streets don't teach you how to disarm a knife-wielding attacker in under 3 seconds. The streets don't teach you the specific pressure point you used on Anna to make her legs give out. Kim turned, leaned against his desk. The streets don't teach military-grade combat tactics. Maybe I'm a fast learner. Elizabeth. His voice dropped, dangerous. Don't lie to me. She finally looked up, meeting his eyes across the desk. I'm not lying. I'm just not telling you everything. There's a difference. Not when you're living in my home. Not when you're standing between me and bullets. Kim moved around the desk, looming over her. Most people would have leaned back, created distance. Elizabeth stayed perfectly still. You want full access to my life? Then I get full access to yours. That wasn't in the contract. Fuck the contract. Kim's hands hit the desk on either side of her, caging her in. You know everything about me. My enemies, my secrets, my failures. You've seen me covered in blood, watched me kill, stood next to me while I made decisions that could start wars. But I don't know who you really are. Elizabeth tilted her head, studying him. You're scared. I'm cautious. You're scared that I'm too good at this. That I'm not really a street girl who got lucky, that I'm something else entirely. She stood, forcing him to either back away or stay uncomfortably close. He didn't move. You're scared that you let someone dangerous into your life, and now you can't get them out. Are you? Dangerous? Yes. No hesitation. But not to you. Prove it. Tell me where you learned to fight. Elizabeth was quiet for a long moment, her eyes searching his face like she was making a calculation. Trust or deflect? Open or close? Fort Campbell, she said finally. 3 years. Army combat training. I enlisted at 18, got out at 21 with skills I wasn't supposed to use in civilian life. Kim's expression shifted. You were military. I was broke and angry and looking for a way out of Baltimore. The army offered structure, purpose, training. Elizabeth's voice hardened. It also offered men who thought female soldiers were entertainment. I learned to fight because I had to. Learned to kill because some lessons require extreme emphasis. You killed someone. In the army. I defended myself. The army called it an unfortunate incident. Gave me an honorable discharge and a check for my silence. She met his eyes without flinching. I've been running ever since. Seoul seemed far enough away from men who thought they could handle me. Kim straightened slightly, processing. You've been hiding. I've been surviving. Like you. Elizabeth's hand came up, resting on his chest. You asked why I don't run from your darkness? Because I have my own. You asked where I learned to fight? In places where fighting wasn't optional. You wanted to know who I really am? She leaned closer, her voice dropping. I'm someone who's seen what power does to people. Who's watched men destroy each other over territory and pride. Who learned that the only way to survive is to become more dangerous than the thing trying to kill you. Kim's hand covered hers on his chest. You're infuriating. I'm honest. Finally. Elizabeth's eyes searched his. You think you're the only one who's unhandleable? I've had 22 jobs in 3 years because people figure out I'm not normal and they panic. I don't do authority well. I don't do submission. I don't play the role society wants me to play. Her fingers curled into his shirt. So yeah, I found your job listing and thought, here's a man who won't expect me to be soft. Who won't ask me to pretend I'm not what I am. And what are you? A weapon looking for a purpose. She said it like a confession. You needed someone who wouldn't break. I needed someone who wouldn't try to fix me. The air between them was electric, charged with all the things they'd been carefully avoiding. Kim's hand slid from her hand to her waist, anchoring her. This is a mistake, he said, even as he pulled her closer. Probably. Elizabeth's other hand found his jaw. You're my boss. I'm your employee. This violates every professional boundary. Your enemies would use it against you. My past could destroy your reputation. All true. But I'm still not leaving. Her thumb brushed his lower lip. And you're still not letting go. Kim's control, so carefully maintained, finally snapped. He kissed her like she was oxygen and he'd been drowning, desperate, consuming, months of tension finally breaking free. Elizabeth met him with equal ferocity, her military training evident in how efficiently she took control, turning them so his back hit the desk, her body pressed against his. You want to know who I really am? She whispered against his mouth. I'm the nightmare that stays. I'm the woman who looked at your darkness and decided it matched mine. I'm the only person in your life who's more dangerous than you are. Kim's hands tangled in her hair. You're mine. I'm my own. She bit his lower lip, hard enough to sting. But I'm choosing you. There's a difference. They broke apart, both breathing hard, the professional facade completely shattered. Tomorrow, Kim said, his forehead against hers, we're going to have to pretend this didn't happen. Tomorrow, Elizabeth agreed, you're still my boss and I'm still your PA who doesn't follow rules. And tonight? Tonight you stop interrogating me and I stop pretending I don't want this. She pulled back, her eyes dark with want and challenge. But understand something, I stayed because I chose to. Not because you demanded it. My past is mine. My training is mine. My darkness is mine. I'll share it with you, but you don't own it. Kim smiled, predatory and satisfied. Fair enough. Good. Elizabeth grabbed her jacket. Now go home. Get sleep. Tomorrow Minyoung wants to discuss the warehouse security upgrades, and I need you functional. You're leaving? I'm establishing boundaries. Just because I kissed you doesn't mean I'm sleeping with you tonight. You'll have to earn that. She walked out, leaving Kim alone in his dark office, more turned on and frustrated than he'd been in his entire life. Elizabeth Rowley, former soldier, current nightmare, the only woman who'd ever walked away from him instead of running. He was absolutely going to marry her. But first, he had to survive her. Elizabeth moved into the penthouse on a Thursday with a single duffel bag and zero ceremony. She claimed the guest room, unpacked in under 10 minutes, and by Friday morning had already rearranged Kim's entire security system. They fell into a rhythm that was professional, efficient, and carefully devoid of the tension that had sparked at Jing's dinner. Elizabeth kept her distance. Kim kept his control. They worked like a machine, dangerous, precise, untouchable. Until the night everything broke. Kim came home at 3 a.m. covered in blood that wasn't his. A deal had gone catastrophically wrong, betrayal from the inside, guns drawn, bodies dropped. He'd killed 5 men with his bare hands before his security could intervene. It was necessary. Justified. Brutal. He walked through his penthouse door expecting emptiness, the usual solitude after violence. Elizabeth was waiting in the living room, still dressed in a red gown like she'd known. "How bad?" she asked, standing as he entered. Kim looked down at his hands, his shirt, the evidence of what he was. What he'd always be. Bad. Most people would have recoiled. The 17 women before would have run. Even his own lieutenants gave him space after nights like this, let him process alone, afraid of the darkness that clung to him like a second skin. Elizabeth walked toward him. "You should," Kim started, wanting to warn her, protect her from this version of himself. "Shut up." She reached him, her hands holding his for a while, then going to his blood-stained shirt, beginning to unbutton it with steady fingers. "Bathroom. Now." "Elizabeth. I said now." Her voice was firm even, unbothered by the violence written across him. "You're getting blood on the marble, and I just had it cleaned." She steered him toward the master bathroom, turned on the shower, adjusted the temperature. When he didn't move, just stood there staring at his reflection in the mirror, at the monster looking back, she grabbed his face, forced him to look at her instead. "I know what you did tonight," Elizabeth said quietly. "Minyang texted me the details. 5 men dead. All of them trying to kill you first. All of them deserving what they got. You don't understand. I understand that you're dangerous. I understand that you've built an empire on violence and fear. I understand that 17 women ran from you because they couldn't reconcile the man in the suit with the man who kills without hesitation." Her thumbs brushed his cheekbones, her touch impossibly gentle against the brutality of the night. "But I'm not them." Kim's breath caught. "You should be afraid." "Of what?" "You?" Elizabeth's smile was sharp, knowing. "Kim, I've seen you at your worst. I've watched you break men with a word, end lives with a phone call. I've stood next to you while you negotiated territories like you were discussing the weather." She pulled his shirt off, tossed it aside. "And I'm still here." "Why?" The word came out broken, desperate. "Why don't you run?" "Because someone has to stay." Elizabeth pushed him toward the shower. "Get in. Wash it off. I'll be here when you're done." Kim stepped under the water, watching blood spiral down the drain. Through the glass, he could see Elizabeth's silhouette as she gathered his ruined clothes, moved through his space like she belonged there. When he emerged, wrapped in a towel around his waist, she'd laid out clean clothes and was sitting on his bed, not the guest room bed, his, holding a first aid kit. "You're hurt," she said, gesturing to a gash on his shoulder he hadn't noticed. "Sit." He sat. She cleaned the wound with practiced efficiency, her hand steady even when he flinched. "The others," Kim said quietly. "They saw this side of me and couldn't handle it." "I know." Elizabeth taped gauze over the cut. "But I'm not asking you to be someone you're not. I'm not asking you to hide the darkness or pretend you're not who you are." She met his eyes, her hand resting over his heart where his pulse hammered. "I'm asking you to stop expecting me to break." Kim's hand covered hers, holding it against his chest. "You're the most terrifying person I've ever met." "Good." Keeps things interesting. But her voice softened. You're not unhandleable, Kim. You're just handled by the wrong people. Women who wanted the power without the price. The money without the blood. The king without the crown. And you want all of it. I want the truth. Elizabeth leaned closer, her forehead almost touching his. I want the man who sits in boardrooms and the man who pulls triggers. The one who signs contracts and the one who ends lives. I want all of it because that's who you actually are, and I'm not afraid of real things. Kim pulled her closer, his hand tangling in her hair, his forehead pressing against hers. A kiss and something more intimate than that. An acknowledgement. A surrender. You're mine, he said, the words somewhere between a question and a claim. I've been yours since I walked into your office and didn't bow. Elizabeth's hand slid to his jaw, holding him steady. The question is whether you're ready to stop fighting it. I don't know how to do this. How to be this. Neither do I. She smiled, real and unguarded. But I stayed, didn't I? Through the blood and the violence and the darkness. I stayed. That's what makes me different. She kissed him there and then, not gently, not carefully. Kim Young met her with equal intensity, then placed her hands in his hair, her body pressed against his like she was claiming territory. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Kim realized something fundamental had shifted. The 17 women who'd run had been right to fear him. He was dangerous, unmanageable, touched by violence that most people couldn't comprehend. But Elizabeth Rowley had never been most people. She'd walked into his darkness, looked it in the eye, and decided to stay. Not despite what he was. Because of it. Tomorrow, Elizabeth said, still in his arms, Minyoung needs signatures on the new territory agreements. Zhang is requesting another meeting. And the Tanaka group sent another threat, this time addressed to both of us. Tomorrow, Kim agreed. But tonight, for the first time in years, he wasn't alone in the darkness. The King of Seoul's underworld had finally found his queen. And she was exactly the nightmare his enemies should have feared. Thank you for watching this video to the end. I'm sure you enjoyed it. We have a lot of other interesting stories lined up for you already. So click on the image showing on your screen to watch the next one.